Welcome everybody. In front of me I have all of the Wars trading card game ever printed. So two full sets, two booster boxes here, and then six starter decks. So I'm joined once again by Steve.
Hello, everybody.
And we're gonna go over this game. So I think this is gonna be a 4 or 5 part series on Wars. This first video is intended to give an overview and a history of the game and sort of set the scene. The next one's gonna have us cracking some of these starter decks and playing a game and then building up our decks. So we're going to try to do, I think it's going to be 4, it might be 5, but we're hoping folks enjoy learning a little bit about Wars. So before I turn it over to Steve, who is our official Decipher historian, I'm just going to show off these starter decks a little bit. So we have an Alliance one, we have a faction called Solidarity, we have a faction called Swarm, we have a faction called Suppression. So I'm going to hand it over to Steve. So this is the first set, Incursion. So you want to pick up the baton and tell us about Wars, set the scene?
Yeah,
The year
sure.
is 2005, is it?
2004.
2004.
Yeah, 2004 in our year. So I think this game is set in like the 2300s or 2400s, so a few hundred years in the future. No, so this game it came out, produced by Decipher, came out about 3 years after Star Wars CCG ended, when Decipher lost the license for the Star Wars property. And essentially, what Decipher wanted to do is use the game engine for Star Wars CCG to produce a new proprietary trading card game. As those of you who played the Star Wars CCG know, the game engine is pretty great. And so this was an attempt to bring it back to life, albeit in a sort of an upgraded, cleaned up manner. And I think when we get into rules and begin like cracking packs, talk about some of the differences. So you could play this game having just played Star Wars CCG and just like skim the rules. There's only a few differences, but the differences do tighten up the rules a little bit and correct some of the design flaws of the early expansion sets. So so that we have here is a sci-fi storyline, and interestingly, it was some of the early story work was contracted out to Michael A. Stackpole, the hard sci-fi, sort of military sci-fi writer, I guess most famous to many people for writing the X-Wing novels in the Star Wars Expanded Universe. So I think he worked with the Decipher to come up with the basic storyline. They even contracted John Howe to do some of the art. John Howe did a lot of the concept art. He's a Lord of the Rings illustrator, did the concept art for the movies, the Peter Jackson movies. So some big names are involved in this. I think they spent a lot of money on it. I won't go. I'm not an expert on exactly the storyline here, but from what I recall of it, and I did a little bit of reading to refresh my memory, you've got 5 factions. One thing I'll just correct is the faction names, those are starter deck names.
Those are starter deck names.
Yeah.
That's I was incorrect, yeah.
No worries. But there's 5 factions, kind of like there's 5 colors of magic. Kind of together.
Okay.
5 factions. Earther, Gonjin, I think, or Gungan, I don't know.
No, totally not Gungan.
It's not Gungan. Interesting that we'll talk into the facts, but the Gungan are a Japanese culture that have migrated to Mars.
Okay,
So
that's kind
Earther,
of cool.
Gonjin or Gongan, Maverick, Shi, and Kuei. All right, so just really quickly, like Earthers are like they're the corporate, slick, polished, maybe a little bit corrupt humans living on Earth. Gongan are, I think, mostly a Japanese culture that have moved to Mars. I don't exactly know why, but they run like sort of like Japanese style mega corporations. They got big robots and some samurai stuff going on. You know, maybe some stereotypes there, but yeah, it's kind of a anime inspired culture. Mavericks are humans living on the farther reaches of the solar system, and they've got a bunch of cybernetics and stuff going on. They're kind of like rogues and pirates. I should say this game is entirely based in our solar system, which is kind of interesting. It's not jumping across light years or anything. Then there are 2 alien races. There's the Shi, which are some kind of like mystical psychic energy wielding aliens, I think, and the Kuei, which are your like armor, like biological armored, kind of like
Zerg.
Kind of like your Zerg. Yeah, the Shi are very Protoss and the Kuei are very Zerg. So there's some kind of like a rift that opens up in our solar system, and these 2 alien races emerge, and wars begin among these different factions. And then also like some people are getting like kind of like psychic or like almost like force type powers from the energy coming from this rift. And so you have a like a kind of like a Jedi card type. Also called, I think it's called Kaizen or something.
Fascinating. So
That's the storyline in a nutshell.
yeah, I mean, I'm kind of hooked. So the year is 2004, 2005. Decipher is coming off of losing the Star Wars CCG license, but it's proven itself as a company that can make really beloved card games, and they're making the Lord of the Rings TCG.
Yep.
So this game had a lot of potential and a lot of momentum early on. So let me just, before Steve goes into like his experience, I will say that this game is not expensive now.
No.
So if you want to get all of this, check out Hills Wholesale. You can get everything pictured for $45. So this game is dirt cheap. So if folks want to dive in and open them themselves, highly encourage that.
Yeah.
So it's not expensive now. But Steve, why don't you tell us about kind of how they launched this?
So they launched with a lot of hype. I was in college in the Bay Area at the time, and a little scene for it sprang up pretty early on. I did a pre-release or release tournament or two in the Bay Area. And there was a pretty good clip of tournaments going on for like a couple months, I feel like. I can't exactly say, at least locally, why it died out, but it definitely died out pretty quickly. So there were some interesting things about the game in the beginning, though. Decipher wanted to have a really solid professional tournament circuit for it, like Magic had. They had 2 big tournaments with a $10,000 prize purse each. The second one was in like Vegas, I think, in March of 2005. I just remember looking this up. So there's a ton of hype and everything around it, and like everybody seemed to like the game in general. There were a few broken cards in the first set, so the meta got solved fairly quickly. But that's something that couldn't be fixed by a few expansion sets. And I think the second expansion actually did clean a lot of that up. And I will say that I think we'll get into this more when we begin playing, but the game fixes a lot of sort of the flaws of, if you've played Star Wars CCG, the Premier and New Hope meta. You don't have a Censor Alter card. There's not this wild disparity between like the Darth Vader type cards and your Stormtroopers, which are so much weaker. Things are a little more balanced, and so they had a lot of good things going for it. But I think it was very expensive. I think they spent a lot of money on it. And Decipher also, as many of you know, there was some internal malfeasance and some financial problems going on at that time. Somebody was stealing money from the company. And I think there was just a general downturn in the gaming industry. A lot of TCGs were failing, and some of their other properties were not doing as well at that time as the Lord of the Rings movies ended. So a lot of things sort of conspired, I think, to bring the game down. They had plans for blocks of sets. Only the first 2 sets of the first block were released. This is so Incursion and Nowhere to Hide. And then I think the third one was going to be called Edge of a Sword. And there's like 1 preview card that was released for it. And I think like this was done. There maybe are PDFs somewhere on the internet. It was going to go to the printers when Decipher put it on permanent hiatus, or like indefinite hiatus in May of 2005. So it lasted from October 04 to May of 05. And so that's the game. And a couple of things about it interesting. It's draftable, unlike really any of their other games were. This game is like, you can draft like Magic the Gathering. I think it drafts pretty well. So I'm curious if you play it to see if it's a game that maybe you could like build a cube out of or something, or I don't know what you can do with it now. We'll find out.
Yeah. So I think that's a really great intro, and let's get to Crack and Pack. So in our next episode of this mini series, I don't know what to call this, but we're gonna crack these and try to play a game. So thanks everybody, and thanks for tuning in.